All right. Hi, everybody. I think they just stole my first slide, so it's going to be quicker. But let me go very quickly over this. I joined actually CapChase in April 2021. Before that, I spent 10 years in America. That's why I'm doing this presentation in English, because my wife speaks to me in English, and I feel more comfortable, which is weird because I was born and raised in Argentina, so it's kind of awkward. So please forgive me if I mix up Spanish with a weird accent. The thing that I want to mention before I start is that everything that I'm going to talk about today only works if you walk the talk. I'm not going to talk about that, but as Ben Horowitz says in his book, what you do is who you are, and your team reflects on you. So everything that I'm going to mention now only works if you believe on what you're doing. I'm going to mention some frameworks, some processes that we add that they only work if you and your team incorporate those into your fundamentals. So with that said, let's talk about my most important meeting in the week. I don't know how many of you have this Monday meeting, but the first meeting I have on the day, on Mondays, is with everybody that's leading my team. The point of this talk, we were around 40 people, so this meeting had 10 people, including myself. It was mainly the tech leads, so the people leading the projects, my managers, and some individuals I would call IC expert, the people that's leading the technical implementations that we do. So this is a important meeting for me. I arrive there, I hear what are the problems, what are the challenges that we have this week, and it basically defines my agenda, right? So you can imagine this is actually my checkpoint. This is how I make sure that we're on track and that everything is going to happen. Uh, Raise your hand if you have a meeting like this. Okay, I see very few hands, so you guys need this meeting. It's what's called a functional meeting, right? With a cross on the mission-oriented meeting. So I arrived there, and my most senior manager, that I don't see over here, Lautaro, if you're there, he poses a question. He says, "Why are you here?" And I'm like, "What do you mean why I'm here? This is my meeting. This is how I control my team. That's everything happening in my head." I'm like, "Control? Whoa. I don't need to control these people. They're senior. I actually want them to be autonomous. Is this a real question or not?" And then I reflect, the person that raised her hand is my most senior manager, is somebody that has known me since university. So I guess he has the guts to ask this question, but what does my other team, the rest of the team think, right? And I like to say I'm data driven, whatever that means, right? So I decided for the third option that crossed my head on my head. The first one was, what the fudge are you even asking? The second one was, okay, maybe this is not that bad. The third one was like, is this real? And in real time, I post two anonymous questions there in the channel. And they say basically with some of my funny comments, hey, should Ese keep silent in these meetings, right? And the second question is, should I skip the meeting at all? Like TA reflects on tech alignment. That's how we call the meeting, right? Uh, Jokes aside, you can think about them if they're real or not. But jokes aside, it's clear that my team is telling me something. It's clear that my team is saying, you're all alone forever. You don't need it here. So when I see that, the first thing that I assume is these people are smart. If they don't want me there, I shouldn't be there. And I finish up the meeting. I actually drop early in the meeting. After this, it was obviously that I shouldn't be there. And I'm looking down and I think, actually, this is what I wanted. So be careful on what you wish. But this is what I wanted. When when I joined Capchase in April 2021, I didn't want to face the same problems that I faced in the past, which is most of us, we arrive to a position in which we are very, very good at our job. We actually are there because we were the best in some way or another one. We know a lot of the things that we're doing, and we know them pretty well. But what ends up happening is that you end up focused on the urgent in a lot of these times, mostly when you're in a growing startup or in a new project that is growing, right? And you have people coming in all the time. You're just covering the holes, you know? So this time around, I wanted to reach a point in which I could focus on the important. I think it correlates directly to being able to take vacations, but I wanted to focus on important. I'm sorry, my humor is very bad. Uh, so upon reflection of how can I focus on the important, the thing that everybody says is that you need an autonomous team, right? Like you need a team that can go without you and they can take most of the decisions. And you need to feel confident that they're going to make or take the right decisions. That's not easy to achieve, mostly because you have a way of seeing the world. So the second question is, how would I feel comfortable with the team making those decisions? And that's how principles came by, right? And you say, if I give a framework to this team, a decision framework that I can operate on, then I'm going to feel comfortable with this team taking those decisions, making those decisions. And this could be, and we're going to talk about what this means. And the fourth point is it needs to be impact oriented. I heard some things just now about technical debt and the business and things like that, right? So you're going to notice that we have a push for impact oriented. I'll call this the proactiveness of the team. At the end of the day, one thing that I tell my team is, you know, they say if a tree falls in the middle of the forest and there's nobody ever there to hear it, did it fall or not, right? The answer in business is it didn't. Whatever you do that doesn't produce value to the business, it, it may as well didn't happen at all. So I set myself on to build these three things. We're going to start with autonomy. So how can I make my team autonomous? And everybody says the same thing. You need to set up clear expectations. So how do I set clear expectations? Let's start with things that seem simple. Let's say we have a manager role. We're going to talk in detail because the manager role is the most different one to everybody else. And one challenge that I have usually is when I try to hire managers, because most managers like the tech lead role. The tech lead role is that person is going to define how we deliver the solution following the principles that we have, right? In time and manner, right? So that's the role that sometimes you relate the most to a manager role. And then finally, you have these expert individual contributors, which the expert word has some weight, but it's basically the people that is in charge of defining the architecture and making it happen. Those are the individual contributors that you know. So the nice thing is that we tie this up with our cultural values. We have three cultural values that we follow nowadays. We have service mindset, builder attitude, and courageous spirit, right? So each of these roles actually represents or has a good reflection on the values of the company. This is the walk the talk piece of it, right? You actually have a cultural value that embeds your role there. So the courageous spirit, the individual contributor, this is the person that makes things happen. I'm going to move over it because we have too many slides, and this one we all know. The second part is the tech leads, and this is important for you to notice. These are not managers. They don't have people reporting to them. They don't have really, they have business influence. They don't make business decisions, right? But they are focusing on delivering things that follow our principles. And then the third one is the tech managers. And this one, I want to be clear. Do you see the word business impact there? So I don't know how many of you read High Output Management. I love that book. If you haven't, I highly recommend it. But he says the impact of a manager or the performance of a manager is measured by the impact of their team and the neighboring teams. Basically, what we're saying here for tech managers is your impact is going to be measured in two things: the happiness of your team, the performance of your team, mostly efficiency of your team, and the impact that the neighboring teams have. You all work in Agile. You all work with cross-functional teams, right? So your neighborhood team could be a product manager, it could be a growth marketing manager, it could be whatever stakeholders relate directly to your team. But your performance as a tech manager is going to be bound to them, right? In the case of data scientists, for example, we work in a company that has a lot of risk, then their performance is tied, the manager performance is tied to the business impact of the risk team. That changes the rules completely. And they also have the chance to focus in more large-term goals, let's say 3 to 6 months, because they have a tech lead that's taking on the day-to-day. But all this doesn't work if you don't have the right principles, right? And this is a part that you may find a little different than other places. We do have widely accepted principles. I think most of you have like documentations and things like that that propose those. We have something that we call communities. Those communities are actually uh, groups of experts defining our architecture long term, let's call it like that. And then we have a policy of no silos. So let me see. Hmm, There we go. So I'm going to show you how we apply the tech principles very quickly. And I don't know if you can see the chart there, but we're going to discuss very quickly. That chart actually shows the improvement on the contributions for communities, right? The improvement of contributions that went beyond the team, beyond the responsibilities for mission-oriented teams, like the work that they do with product or with other stakeholders. Instead, the effort that they dedicated beyond their job to actually have impact in our architecture. This was a long road. If you look there, it starts in April 21 and ends in April 22. That's when we introduced the latest changes. And actually, I don't have the results there. I have the results till from January till August, right? The interesting part is that the teams didn't grow there. Actually, we removed people from those communities. And I'm going to tell you very quickly why. So first of all, when I joined, we established squads and communities, which is guilds and squads in the agile methodology from Spotify. This is pretty standard. We divided the role of tech lead and tech manager, and that had some contributions to this. But the second step in July 21st, that's when we introduced the biggest change. The biggest change was the no silos policy that we're going to talk about in a second, and then tech design reviews. So now we introduce our RFC methodology, so everybody can review what is happening across the organization. And finally, the other thing that we introduced that was game changing for us, and you can see the jump between February and March, is that in April, we made community membership as a privilege. We actually kicked out people from those teams. We did two things really. One of them is we said, if you want to be in certain level in the company, you need to participate in those. And the other thing that we said is, if you don't participate on those, we're going to remove you because you're not adding value. Those things are actually the things that push into this increasement in productivity. Why? Well, because at some point those turn into discussion groups, and it's fine to debate. We can do it in our free time. I love to read blog posts, but it's not what these communities were meant for. So these communities are the ones defining the principles. Oh, sorry. These communities are the ones defining the principles and the ones that are being evaluated on those principles. And as I said before, these are actually shared with the whole company through tech reviews. Right. Impact oriented. Sorry, I don't know if I. Yeah, there you go. Impact oriented. So all this works, but you still need your decision framework. And I think most of you heard of OKRs. We actually have two different types of OKRs. Again, we have OKRs for tech, and those are solely for the tech organization. And then we have our business OKRs. These are fundamental because the business OKRs are going to be the OKRs for managers. The tech OKRs are going to be the OKRs for our communities. And if you look there, we are tech. And we are tech means the no silos policy. And I'm going to reflect on this multiple times because if you need to take away something from here, it's going to be how damaging silos are in an organization. So we implemented the no silos policy very quickly. We decided that we're all tech. There are not roles at tech in Capchase. There are not different titles. I don't have data scientists or site reliability engineers or software engineers. We follow much more a structure much more like the one that IBM or Intel follow in the early days, where everybody was technical staff member, right? We actually screen for that. We look for people that has a very hard background in computer science and can actually move across the stack very comfortably. That's because it allows us to the second thing, which is unified code bases. It doesn't matter in the team that you are in, you can collaborate everywhere. And we impress on the team this value of you can do it, right? We call it ask, don't stop, right? I think for that, for me, was very useful in my career, but I also think it's a team mentality that breaks with the silos. And I'm very proud about this because we were successful at finding out that the expertise that we were moving from people that only worked in backend, which usually have a very structured line of thinking about the issues that will come up for numeric errors, right? They were, for example, collaborating with people in front end or with people in data to figure out and reflect on how we can move those practices. Actually, what I would say is data engineering is something that we really didn't have defined, given that everyone in the team was doing data, right? And we were moving those practices there. Um, I don't know how many of you have experiences with data analytics teams, but usually there's some differences there. And that kind of cross collaboration helped a lot within the tech team. So with that, we have the OKRs. And this is our SLAs or tech KPIs, right? Then we have our tech OKRs that are community based and your business OKRs. I think the most important part for me, if you're going to take away something, is that the tech OKRs are what allows us to be proactive. The tech OKRs are not simply, we want this to run faster. In some cases, they are. But in some other cases, it has the long-term vision of what we need for the organization. Last year, we had two big tech OKRs through the year. One of them was to reduce our spending in Google Cloud to be cost efficient, right? And we measure it as a relationship on customers. And we had another big OKR that we still have that is about proactive initiatives. We want to actually bring up value to the business just with the free time and low hanging fruit that we find in the team, right? So you can see how those get intertwined. Finally, nowadays we have some of the standards DORA metrics there, right? Like we want more automated releases per developer per day and things like that. And finally, the business OKRs relate directly to the performance of our managers that we were mentioning before. So this is our contract as a team. This is what I tell my managers and what I tell my tech leads and my community leads nowadays that we need to achieve in the next quarter. And that's pretty much it. This is agreed upon. It's usually defined over 6 months to a year. And things change every day because we're in a startup. But still, these are the underlying things that we track and that we follow. So actually, when my team asked me why was I there, the reality was that it was because they already knew what I care about. Thank you, everyone.